Girls during puberty develop 14% smaller hearts. Their lungs are 12% smaller than girls. You cannot debate that. That's just a biological fact. That helps boys take in oxygen and pump blood more efficiently than girls can. That gives boys a clear edge in endurance sports.
Today on Hot News Today, Senator Kennedy delivers a fiery warning, claiming President Biden's new rule on transgender athletes could destroy women's sports. Kennedy challenges the NCAA, urges Congress to decide the future of fair competition, and highlights a debate already dividing America.
The debate that President Biden's rule has provoked could profit, it seems to me, from some facts. It begins in a mother's womb. Even before birth, it is a biological fact that baby boys begin developing different hormones and different skeletal structures in the mother's womb that help them outperform girls athletically. That's just a biological fact. Testosterone exposure in the womb alters brain development in boys. That's just a biological fact. Now, what does that do? That improves their motor skills vis-a-vis girls. And it improves their aggression and increases their aggression. Those are two traits that benefit competitive athletes.
Kennedy's argument starts before birth. He claims baby boys develop different hormones and skeletal structures in the womb, giving them athletic advantages. Testosterone exposure, he says, deepens the voice and boosts motor skills and aggression, traits that benefit athletes. Kennedy argues these differences explain why boys, on average, outperform girls athletically.
Boys also experience what the doctors and the scientists call a mini puberty, once again in the mother's womb, shortly before birth. That helps baby boys gain weight faster than baby girls once they're born. And that ultimately is what contributes to boys, generally speaking, being taller on average than girls. And that's the case, as we know, throughout life. The differences between biological males and biological females explode during puberty.
The senator explains that puberty widens the biological gap between males and females. Girls develop smaller hearts and lungs, and wider pelvises, which he says give boys an edge in endurance sports like swimming and cycling. Boys gain broader shoulders, higher bone density, and more muscle. Advantages, Kennedy argues, exist in almost every sport.
Girls during puberty develop 14% smaller hearts. Their lungs are 12% smaller than girls. You cannot debate that. That's just a biological fact. That helps boys take in oxygen and pump blood more efficiently than girls can. That gives boys a clear edge in endurance sports, like swimming, for example, cycling, rowing. Girls develop a wider pelvis. That decreases the amount of force their legs exert when they're lifting, when they're kicking, when they're pedaling. That's another relative disadvantage vis-a-vis boys or men when you compare female athletes to their male counterparts. Now, boys, in contrast, develop broader shoulders. A biological fact, folks. That allows them to make space for more upper body muscle mass and gives them a decided advantage when competing against a girl. It's hard to think. I can't think of a sport in which a higher muscle-to-fat ratio isn't helpful. The average boy will grow 5 inches taller than the average girl. It's just a fact. Even when men and women are the same height, men have higher levels of bone density, which helps them move more forcefully and to escape more injuries. Women are at a competitive physical disadvantage to men beginning in the mother's womb. And that's why we have had women's sports and men's sports. And that's why Congress passed Title IX, to try to provide equality for both.
Kennedy reminds us women's sports ensure fairness and Title IX protects equal opportunities. He stresses empathy for gender dysphoria but warns against biological males in women's sports.
I do not hate anyone. I look for grace wherever I can find it. I understand that when I draw in breath, I'm sucking in mercy. I have great empathy for people who have gender dysphoria, and I hope they find peace in their lives. But allowing biological males with gender dysphoria to compete in women's sports will destroy women's sports. You know that, I know that, and the American people know that.
Kennedy calls the NCAA spineless and accuses its leaders of failing to protect women's athletics. He says Congress should decide, but expects states to act since public opinion is on his side, citing polls showing most Americans support keeping men's and women's competitions separate.
You can't depend on the NCAA. They're spineless, okay, and their leadership there is cell deep stupid. This should be determined by Congress. I think it has been determined by Congress, but there's clearly a vacuum because many of my Democratic colleagues support the rule. So I think you're going to see the states step in as they should. But when you ask Americans what they think, that's what counts in a democracy. 70% of Americans support having men and women compete separately. And, well.
Kennedy makes his stance clear. He won't support any measure forcing parents to have their daughters share locker rooms with biological males. He frames the issue as one of fairness, safety, and just common sense.
I'm not going to vote. I meant what I said. I don't hate anyone, but I am not going to vote to tell a mom or a dad that they have to force their 13-year-old girl in a junior high school locker room to look at the penis of a 13-year-old boy. I'm not going to do that. And if Senator Schumer would allow us to have a vote on this, I don't think most senators would vote for it.
From biology in the womb to decisions in Congress, Kennedy's warning leaves little room for middle ground. The clash over Biden's rule on transgender athletes is one of America's most explosive cultural battles. Like, share, and subscribe for more hot news today.